Hi, my name is Maria Bryan. I'm a 23-year-old bisexually identified woman. I'm conducting a series of interviews with some of my friends and acquaintances who have volunteered their time to come and speak about their opinions and their experiences with sexuality and gender issues. For the purposes of this course, I tried to guide some of the discussions to stay on a more academic topic to them for at least a little bit. But I also want to give these individuals a lot of free rein on what they want to talk about, because one of the hardest things about gender and sexual academic exploration is that there's so much out there, and every single individual is completely different. Every stereotype has its exceptions, and every stereotype has different definitions. The idea of a female for one person might be something completely different than someone else's. And in this video, I want to give as many people who want to come talk about gender as much of a chance to talk about what they think and what they believe and what they have experienced. Part of my inspiration for this project was the artist Andy Warhol, who is known as not only a visual artist who worked with silk screening and sculpture, but also a film producer and director. A lot of Andy Warhol's films involved people of alternative sexualities, whether they were gay, asexual, were drag queens, and just a plethora of different things. And it's him and his art is one of the ways that I really was lucky enough to realize my own sexuality and to explore and learn about sexuality in the modern world, even though maybe back when he started working on his films in the 1960s that might not be modern for today. But nonetheless, the format in which that he did his films was quite interesting, and I love it, and I wanted to maybe mimic it in a bit. So I've removed from most of the footage any additional commentary or questioning that I have done in order to allow a more free image of what the individuals who have come to talk to me about actually believe. I've only left my own voice in for a little bit if it's necessary to the questions, or it's necessary to know what we were discussing. And I think I must have had over an hour and a half, 2 hours of video footage that I've gathered with the help of Trent Thomas, Mark Eden, Corey Hunter, and Roxy Dior. And I would like to say a big thank you to these guys for coming out and talking to me and exposing themselves a little bit and helping me just to have fun with this project.
Hi, my name is Corey Hunter. I'm a 22-year-old geriatric personal support worker at Spencer's Nursing Home. I'm also a nationally recognized gay rights activist. I've received the PFLAG Champion Award in 2008, as well as the Lieutenant Governor's Medal of Nova Scotia in 2007. I travel around. I've done teachers' conferences as well as public health forums. I've lectured at the NSCC on different campuses as well as other schools on issues regarding LGBTQ youth, bullying, how it's affecting our world, and stuff like this. Another interesting fact about myself is that I am a drag queen performer. My stage name is Miss Roxy Dior, Roxanne Dior, and I perform bi-weekly at Triangles Bar in Moncton, as well as travel around the Maritimes to do various shows, including Priscilla down at St. FX, and the Moncton Pride Parade, Cumberland Pride, Truro Pride, and more as well. So it definitely makes for a very interesting contrast to my life as a low-grade nurse in geriatrics. So I guess it kind of makes me very well-rounded and diverse, I suppose.
Being a male who identifies as homosexual, how do you find acting as a woman affects your sexuality?
I find that mostly for me, it's not so much that I'm acting as a woman specifically when I do drag, it's that I'm acting as another side of myself.
And do you find it easier, say, going to a bar dressed in drag because of the way society kind of is a little bit more lax about that kind of stuff now, particularly in pop culture? Like, for example, we see Lady Gaga taking the hermaphrodite rumors and running with it and wearing a costume that obviously has a phallus attached to it, or she has been recently doing a lot of drag photos of herself.
Yes.
Do you find that easier?
I do find it's easier in one respect, that seeing more and more in our culture and in our media about sexuality. Just recently I watched an episode of Malibu Country. It's a new sitcom starring Reba McEntire, and one of the main characters is this fashionista gay male. And that's something that we might not have seen in a main character until recently. Lady Gaga dressing up constantly. Her performances and her shows are supposed to be very, very theatrical and very costumed and over the top, and a lot of it does center around gender and sexuality. Her lyrics in her song, like Born This Way, like you say, the costume that suggests a phallus. And I find that by kind of bending the gender norms, it does make it a little more socially acceptable in specific instances, like going out to the bar. But again, if I were to dress up in an elaborate costume, female personality type of way, and I were to walk into the store at Needs, well, I might still get a few funny looks. I don't think we're quite at the point where our society is that prepared or that familiar with it, but it is definitely making huge changes and leaps and bounds socially. As far as sexuality being more in the media, I think it's great because we're more open and we're talking about it. We're able to break down these walls, and suddenly there's not as much judgment. However, there is always the downfall that there is a lot of sex and sexuality in the media, and some people may not want that around their children. Some people may think or argue that children are being exposed to it at too young an age. You know, everything has a double-edged sword, and I think a lot of it isn't so much the facts, but it's our approach. Sex is something that's very normal. Sexuality is something that is very healthy, and it's not just about what you do in the bedroom, it's about who you are as a person, how you dress, how you identify, what you're interested in, who you're interested in, what you like, what you don't like. It's you as a person. And I think that when we embrace the aspects of it that are the nitty-gritty, the sex, the details, the orientation, when we embrace that and when we bring it into the media and we acknowledge it, it's a positive thing, because we're allowing people who are developing as youth to see that there are alternative decisions about their lives that are informed. However, I think that we have to be careful in how we present this, because although it's great to present it in a flashy media way that collects viewers and collects entertainment and it collects an audience, we also have to make sure that we're addressing it educationally as well, so that people know that, okay, yes, sex is normal and healthy, but it's normal and healthy for somebody who is at an appropriate age, who is taking appropriate steps to be safe, and who is taking appropriate steps to be educated about the decisions that they're making. And I think that as long as we cope with those negatives by embracing them and adding a positive flair to them, by using education to blend over our ignorance, then I think it's okay. And I think that we can adapt and we can cope to the negative. And I find that that is a large problem with today's world. Just recently, my mother was talking to me last week that my cousin, Dolly, who is quite a bit older, she's my distant cousin, and she was all excited because she bought my Christmas present. And apparently her husband made the comment that, you know, well, that's not for boys, you know, you shouldn't get that for Corey. And she said, no, I know my Corey and he's going to like it. And right there is an example of something that's heteronormative. I don't know what this gift is, but apparently it's not something that is stereotypically meant for a male. So people assume that you won't like it because you're supposed to like, or boys do like, a certain thing. And again, that goes right back to the dangers of stereotyping. It's not just about stereotyping the gay male or stereotyping the lesbian. It's also about stereotyping the heterosexual people, because when you put them into a specific category that you have to fit in order to be normal, suddenly you are making it very rigid. These people also have to conform, or people are going to think that they're not straight. So it gets right back to stereotyping, it gets right back to heteronormativism. They're very, very deeply rooted and related, and I think that it's two very dangerous things because it does not allow for people to be creative and expressive. It forces people instead to be very, very rigid. We have to be this, I have to be this, I cannot be this, I cannot be this. And that's what you have to do. One thing that I do think is very important that I would like to take note on. Earlier we talked about progress and how there's been a lot of progress made. People are a lot more open, they're a lot more accepting, and it's a great place. But I think that one thing people often forget is they see the progress and they think, well, why are we still doing stuff? Like, clearly people are getting better with it. But the reality is that we are making progress, but we're only partway down the road. And a lot of people think of the problems as being very distant. A lot of times when I do lectures or I do presentations, I spend a large time of my segment talking about the reality of how close to home homophobia is. A lot of times I use personal examples, just because it just goes to show that there's actually somebody in the same room as you who've experienced this. I use examples like recently I called my cell phone provider. I needed to talk to them about an issue I was having. I had an overdue amount on my bill. I needed to pay it so I could get an upgrade. It's a very simple conversation. The woman on the phone refused to let me access my account even though I had my password. I had all of my information, my social insurance number, my birthday. I had everything ready to provide for them. She basically said that my voice did not match my profile and that my profile said that the account belonged to a Mr. Corey Hunter. She refused to let me access my account and hung up on me. I called back and she ended up doing the same thing. And I actually had to go to the man who worked at the store, give him my driver's license so that he could read to her the master number and read to her his client ID number to prove that he was actually an employee and that he was actually validating my driver's license. And then she would let me access my account so that I could get the balance to pay her. And it seems like a very long and convoluted story to share, but it's just an example of how sometimes even the most simple day-to-day things can be turned into a really big thing when it doesn't have to be. And it does happen locally right here in your own town. One time I was jumped in a park while I was babysitting 3 boys. And I was very, very lucky that there was a baseball game happening across the street, so somebody saw and came over to interject. But it was a very, very terrifying experience. And this is the reality. There have been people in Nova Scotia and in New Brunswick, here in our home back town, who over the last couple of years I have known personally who have been murdered. There was a gentleman in Halifax named Raymond, and I'd worked with him before on Pride-related events, and he was a very nice man. I didn't know him extremely personally, but I had spoken with him before, and he was beaten to death. Leaving a gay bar at night. And so the reality is that we are making progress, but we're not done. And I constantly like to remind people that homophobia, violence, transphobia, these are not words describing things that are not in your own backyard. There are people that are in your province, there are people that are in your community, there are people in your neighborhood that are facing these things on a daily basis. And they could be as small as somebody taunting them and calling them a faggot or using offensive language, right up to violence, and in extreme cases, even murder in your own backyard. And so it's something that I really like to stress because it's something that affects all of us. It's something that affects all of our communities. And I don't mean just the gay community, I mean our community as people, just as human beings. It affects all of us. And so I'm always encouraging people to remember that we need to continue making change. I'm Miss Roxanne Dior. My friends and most of my fans call me Roxy. I'm a drag queen performer that travels the Maritimes. I've performed in Halifax as well as Moncton and Truro. I've performed across Cumberland County, Prince Edward Island. I've performed down at St. FX at Acadia and a lot of other venues. I primarily perform frequently for Pride celebration functions as well as fundraisers for different charity events. I was recently down in Sackville at Allison University. We did 2 shows there last year to help raise some money and awareness for their QSA, their Queer Straight Alliance Catalyst. And it's a lot of fun. It gives me a chance to express and to demonstrate the diversity and fluidity of gender expression while at the same time providing an entertaining atmosphere for a wonderfully dedicated group of fans. So a very special opportunity I have.
Now, Roxy, when did you first start coming about in the performance world?
My very first performance, I had just turned 15, and I went to a pageant that was being held in Southampton, and I performed. My talent for the pageant was popular from Wicked. I sang it, and I pulled a member of the audience up. It was a hilarious performance, and I won the title of Miss Pumpkin Center 2005. And that was my very first drag performance. And since then, it started out with just being the occasional thing, something I would do at Halloween for friends, something that I did to perform at the local Run for the Cure, and just little things like this. And slowly it grew into a bi-weekly act at Triangles nightclub, into traveling around to different shows, and I've performed for audiences as small as 10 or 12 at private parties up to as large as 500 or more. So it's really been a fantastic opportunity, very wide ranges over the last 7 years now. So
Now, you've worked with quite a few other queens in the last 7 years.
I have.
And do you find that there's any sort of resentment, actually, between trans-identified drag queens or just normal cis-male drag queens?
I think, realistically, I haven't seen any.
Yeah.
But to say that I haven't seen any doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I know that I have, I've performed with a lot of girls from Halifax, a lot of the queens from Halifax. A lot of them travel down to the Priscilla show, some of them come up to Moncton. I've been very blessed with Rouge Fatale, with Kimberly Diamonds, El Noir, Hakela. There's just been a lot of really strong performers, even the former Empress Celia Cruz and Miss Vicky. And there are a lot of wonderful ladies. And within the circle of performers that I've worked with, I have met one who is more trans-identifiable, is my understanding. And she fits right in with the rest of them, and she performs with the rest of them, and let me say, can she ever perform? She's a very strong dancer, and I'm jealous myself. And there seems to be no resentment or hostility there. But again, this is what I see myself, and it would be very ignorant of me to assume that because I don't see it, it doesn't exist. So that's as much as I can comment on it truthfully. I think a lot of the grounds for belief that feminists are against drag queens are probably because we are caricatures of what they're fighting against. A lot of feminists are fighting against the fact that women should need to be a certain stereotype. They should need to be so pretty. They should need to wear their makeup. They should need to have longer, nice hair, or you know, I don't know, furs and lace tops, whatever. They are choosing to say that that's not who we have to be. And I think that's great, because I think we should all be who we want to be. But I think that what they're doing is they're spiting themselves. They're saying, we don't have to be this, you know, but at the same time, they're also saying that you can't be this. And maybe a drag queen is just a male who wants to be those things. Trying to fight for the equality of gender expression, and as a woman that you don't have to fit into these gender stereotypes, then you should also be fighting for the expression for people who do want to. And you know, drag queens are largely meant as entertainment, as caricatures, as expressions, and I've met drag queens that are very much stereotypically what feminists are fighting. I've also met drag queens that are not. A few weeks ago I hosted a show, and I did it all done up as pink, and I had my own hair, and I was wearing denim shorts and stilettos, and I had my makeup done up, and yes, I was very clearly designed to express myself as a woman, but I was not, you know, I was not wearing a little dress, and I was not wearing big flashy earrings. My hair wasn't, you know, flowy and beautiful. It was, you know, I probably would have done a feminist proud had I not had a penis. But, you know, the point is that even within the drag world, there is a great deal of diversity, and that feminists and the rest of us, all of us, need to realize that we can fight our stereotypes, and we can say that we don't have to be this way, but at the same time we have to be careful about saying that you can't be that way, because then all we're doing is creating another rigid box to force ourselves into. And how is that any progress? I think that the most important and fun thing about doing drag is the expression of sexuality as a fluid thing instead of something static. A lot of people assume that to be straight is to be one thing, to be gay is to be another, to be bisexual, to be transgender, to be transsexual. No matter what it is, it's a category. Alfred Kinsey had developed the Kinsey scale, which I find absolutely fascinating, and it's this belief that sexuality is it's almost a timeline or a plane, and it's flexible. It can be one, it can be another. You can change as you change as a person, which to me makes sense. All of our experiences in our lives shape who we are, and our sexuality is who we are, so it's natural that that changes. And maybe you will always identify as heterosexual or homosexual or transgender, but your sexuality, even though you still identify with that title, can still change, and it's still fluid as you like and dislike other things and as you change. And I think that the most exciting thing about drag is that it is a play-by-play presentation of that fluidity. Today, I came to be interviewed for this, and I showed up as a boy, and I interviewed a segment as a boy, as a gay, identifying male, Corey hunter, an activist, a nurse. That's who I am. In 10 minutes, I threw on a wig, and I put on some different clothing. I added a little more makeup, and suddenly you had a subtle professional version of another side of me and another gender expression. And to me, that is a complete presentation. 1 minute I can be a boy, 1 minute I can be a girl, but the entire time I'm male, but the way you perceive me may have changed. However, regardless of the change that happened in 10 minutes, I'm still the same person. We're still having the same conversation. We're still tackling the same issues. I still have the same opinions and the same feelings. But the presentation of my gender has changed. And I think that that's one of the most fascinating things about drag. It's an opportunity to educate through entertainment. And although I'm not standing on a stage telling them that, on some level, they may realize it, that this person changes day to day, moment to moment, but they're still the same human being. And that is the most interesting thing about drag. It's your expression.
I am Trent Thomas, 24 years old, and straight.
Yeah. Well, I've known you for years. I know you're a completely heterosexual male.
Mm-hmm.
But also I know that your brother is a gay male.
Mm-hmm.
And you've spent a lot of time around that community. I know the two of us have gone to Reflections, the gay bar in Halifax. That is one of the bigger ones. And what is it like being a straight man who spends a lot of time with stereotypically gay men?
I don't know. I never really think about it too much, but it was a little weird, I guess. Not really weird, but I do often get labeled as gay, or get asked if I'm gay, because I also have a tongue ring, which that doesn't help that situation, but I don't really take it as offensive or anything. It's just, I don't know, it would be easy to mistake, I guess. I hang out with a lot of gay guys.
Do you find that the way you dress has anything to do with that, aside from your tongue ring?
No, I haven't thought, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Maybe sometimes, but I think it's just the people I hang out with. Yeah.
How do you deal with situations like that when someone might approach you?
I don't know, I just tell them I'm straight and laugh, I guess.
Do you have a hard time dealing with that situation?
No.
No?
No. Like I have my brother my whole life, he was gay. I know a lot of people that are, a lot of my friends even from growing up are, so I don't know, it's just kind of the people I hang out with, so it's not offensive to me.
Do you find it's different hanging out with homosexual friends as opposed to heterosexual friends?
Very. I find that the gay community, it's a lot more accepting of everything. I'm not saying that the straight community necessarily isn't, but it depends on who you're hanging out with. Had a lot more problems with like straight people, especially the ones that I don't know that I'm hanging out with, because I'm not like a bro or like right into, I don't know, just doing guy things, like stereotypical, like just getting drunk and being an idiot. I do that, but I don't know.
Do you find with the re-emerging, like as we know, since like probably the 60s, like the queer community has been much more open and much more accepted into society and culture, especially in North America. Do you find you kind of have to make your own identity as heterosexual? Do you think that's harder?
I don't really know. I don't think so. I think it's just like because before it was probably just everyone would have been labeled as straight unless you knew they were gay, and I find now like people can look at me and think I'm gay because I'm at a gay bar. That's, you know, I'm a guy at a gay bar. You're gay, but I don't really think I've never tried to make an identity of myself as a straight person. I don't know, I'm who I am, and I don't really think of my sexual orientation when I get dressed or when I go out and talk to people. It's just whatever.
Do you think that some people do that?
I definitely think that some people do, which, like, the whole, well, I guess, I don't know, because I don't really hang out with a lot of people like that, but, like, mostly the people that I have issues with when I hang out with them when they're trying to be, I don't know, like, especially when they start thinking I'm gay and they're trying to make themselves look straighter, I guess, and make me look gayer. Like, just being, like, the big man, or, like, pushing me around a little bit. Like, I've gotten a couple fights before because of it, and, like, I don't fight people, so I just get the shit kicked out of me and punch in the face and stuff, and I don't know, I never really let anything like that bother me, and but I do think that a lot of people do try to make themselves, like, build themselves up as straight, so that they think if you call them gay, they're gonna get offended and they're gonna get angry. It's like, in my perspective, I hang out with a lot of gay guys, and a lot of people that are accepting of it, because if you're not accepting of it, you're not really my friend. Like, you can't hate my brother and be my friend. So, in my life, I find that it's, just especially over the last few years when I got closer to my brother, hanging out with all his friends and everything, I find that it's not really that big of a problem. As far as society, I don't think you can really just, like, flip a switch or, like, start working towards it. It's just something that is taught to people by their parents, like, their role models in their life. That's the way they were, and, like, they're brought up, like, without gay people around them, and they don't know that, like, they're just people, just like them. They just don't like girls, they like guys. Like, it's not, I don't know. As far as society, I really don't know what could be done.
Well, speaking of family, do you mind talking a little bit about what it was like growing up in your household with a gay brother and two straight brothers?
Yeah, because Tyler, we pretty much, growing up, knew that he was gay. Like, yes, it's all the stereotypes and everything. He always said he wasn't, so we believed him. It was just Tyler. But, like, it was things like Tyler would get, like, Barbies for Christmas while we was playing with dolls and everything. And yes, we did make fun of him a little bit for it, because we were kids and boys aren't supposed to play with those things. And, you know, he was always, like, playing school and doing hair and all that stuff. But at the same time, I used to play with him too, and I think that's probably why I'm a little more accepting of things like that, because he was my brother, and I really do look up to him. And I don't think that anything that he's ever done is wrong, so I don't know, like, I find that it was a good experience for my life, because I don't know why, but I guess just making me a little more accepting of people and who they are as people more than just anything else. Because I find too, especially with like, it just doesn't matter to me, especially gay guys, like I'm not gay, so I'm not going to sleep with them, and they're not going to steal my girlfriend, so what's the point? Like, there's no sense to be angry at them just for being gay. I'm about to move in with a couple of gay guys, and they live with a bunch of, in an apartment building with a couple drag queens and a pre-hop transsexual. And, I don't know, it's a little weird at first when you're meeting people like that, because it's just, you don't, and even, like, I'll even say for them, for the gay community, when you meet a transsexual, you don't know what to think or what to say.
I personally have a little bit of a hard time, especially with transgender individuals that aren't clear about their transgenderism. I always want to be very careful because I don't want to offend them.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before. I think the idea of transsexualism is fascinating. I love that people can do that. I love that there's cosmetic surgery and all that, but I'm also very careful about the social aspect of it because I don't want to get too excited or call someone by the wrong pronoun. What do you think about people getting offended if you don't like? Because I know I've been in some situations where nobody's told me, nobody's made it clear to me what an individual likes to be referred as.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing applies for asexual individuals. And if you don't know, how are you supposed to act on it?
Yeah,
right?
I think that they just need to be a little more understanding. It's like I'm like the problem with it is that they probably do receive a lot of ridicule, a lot of like people just not accepting it. But if you don't know and you see somebody and they look like a guy, you're gonna call them a guy. That's if you call a straight guy a girl, they're gonna get offended too. So you don't like, you know what I mean? You can't and asking is weird, so I think they just need to be a little more accepting, not really accepting, but like understanding that you just don't know, and like, cause the one I met, he or she was completely fine with talking openly, like if you said something she would just correct you, and then that was like, you know what I mean?
Good.
She was very understanding, and that I find is awesome. But I know there is probably people where you'd call them a guy, and they'd be like, I'm not a fucking guy, and like, fuck you, and all fucking shit, and whatever. But I think that's just personality from person to person and what they've gone through in their life. Like, because I'm sure, like, growing up, and it would be confusing, and then, like, coming into puberty, and, like, you're starting to like guys, and you're like, well, I'm a gay. And then you grow up even more, and then it's like, well, I identify myself as a woman, not as a gay man, but as a straight woman. Like that would be hard.
Yes.
It would be really, really hard. So I can understand why, like, because they're trying to create an identity for themselves that isn't what what they grew up as, or changing or whatever, and it would be hard, but I think it's just, you have to be a little understanding that people are gonna make that mistake. Oh, I find that just in general as people, I don't know if it's just me and I'm starting to, but I find that I'm just coming to realize that everyone has a struggle in their life for some reason. Like, everyone has something, and not a lot of people will tell you about it unless you're like their close friends or whatever, and maybe they don't even know, it's just in their head. But it's just, everyone does, and it's like, we're all still people, and everyone's, like, to me, everyone's a person. I don't really care anything else. Like, you would deserve respect, and regardless, so.
My name's Mark, and I identify as male, but that might not be necessarily what society thinks male is, but I identify as it, and I'm gay, but I'm kind of on the cusp of that and pansexuality, which basically is my way of saying that I exclusively find myself attracted to and dating men, but if an opportunity were to present itself, I probably would jump right on it. And yeah, so that's kind of who I am. I'm 22, by the way, if that's any importance or anything like that. I haven't really, to say that I've never found a woman attractive before would be a lie, but I just don't, it's not the same as with guys. It's different. It's almost more about aesthetics rather than a sort of more primal instinct in terms of attraction. But at the same time, there are, what, 7 billion people on this planet, and I find it very hard to believe that there wouldn't be at least one woman out there that I wouldn't find attractive. It's kind of like thinking, you know, there's so many galaxies in the sky, and to think that we would be alone kind of is like almost arrogance, because it's just way too assumptive. Like I can't assume that much. So basically it's kind of how I identify as just dating men and liking men and enjoying men predominantly, but also believing that I have the potential to date women. I just choose not to.
What do you find the differences between the way you are attracted to a male or a female? I know you said aesthetically there's a difference there. Is there more to it, though?
With girls, I don't find myself having a sexual reaction. If I were ever to find myself in a position where I would be in a relationship with a girl, I think that it would have to be almost like an asexual type thing for both of us. I mean, I'm not saying we wouldn't have sex. I could definitely see myself having sex with a woman, no problem. I would have a little bit of a hard time because I haven't found myself ever in a position where I have fantasized about women. So it would be new to me, but I guess I can't really say I wouldn't, you know, enjoy it. But I think that the way that a difference would be, like with men, like I said, it's a sexual impulse. It's very raw, it's very primitive, it's very primal. With women, it's kind of more appreciative. I would say also I am not as likely to objectify women. I know that sounds awful, but like I am a human being and I am attracted to men sexually, and to think that I wouldn't be objectifying them, I don't believe that that is possible at some point in your life. I think you will probably end up doing that for whatever gender you're attracted to. But I think that that's the main difference. It's a difference between a sexual appreciation and a more emotional appreciation. I find I connect very easily with women, and that's probably where the main basis of the attraction would be. It would basically mean that I would meet a girl where we would click to the point where there could be a source of attraction and there could be potential for us to go further into something. I've been in relationships with women up until a time when I was 16, and it was kind of always the same thing. Like I loved every single one of them. I hear countless stories of men who have come out of the closet and they say that they were lying to themselves or they were lying to the people that they were with, like the women that they were with. I never found myself, not once, lying to myself. I was very torn up over the fact that I broke up with my girlfriend in high school because I wanted to explore that, you know, homosexual side of me, I guess, for lack of a better term, and it tore me up. Not because I felt, at first, for a long time, I thought it was because I didn't want to hurt her, but it was actually because I'd grown comfortable with her, I had grown to love her, and I did love her, and, you know, I was very, very attached to her, and it wasn't just that I was attached to the comfort of having someone there. I really did feel like the same way that I do with the boyfriends that I get now, and it was no different. And yeah, I think it's just hard for me to kind of delve into as a topic, I guess, mostly because it's never happened on an extreme level above what's happened in high school, which I think that, you know, that can be a little bit of an iffy territory because we're not completely grown into ourselves in high school yet. But it's, you know, I guess it's all speculation. It really is. I only go by what I know, but I do like to constantly think about what could be, I guess. When you're talking about a lot of pagan sort of belief systems like what I'm in, I find there is still difficulty just as much as there would be in any other, you know, mainstream religion for anybody who of any sexual identity, mostly because it's a lot of talking about the masculine and feminine, which that in itself is a huge problem in terms of terminology. I use masculine and feminine quite often only because we haven't made terms for what they mean. people think masculine means being gruff or, you know, dressing like the typical male, or that feminine means being soft and being, you know, dressing like the typical female or being submissive. That's another thing. Masculine tends to oftentimes mean dominant for some reason, and feminine means submissive, which isn't true at all, in my opinion. And I think that it can be a little bit difficult because, you know, I identify as androgynous, and a lot of times I will want to satisfy certain things that society would deem masculine or feminine on different days. Like, for instance, yesterday I wore a tie and a dress shirt and dress pants to work, as opposed to wearing, you know, like a cardigan sweater with a nice scarf and my makeup all done. And it was just because I wanted to satisfy a part of me that, you know, is still there, because I find that I'm very too gendered in a lot of ways. And the only way, I found it very difficult to explain why I did it, because some people were very surprised that I had dressed that way. And I kept finding myself going to, well, I felt like being a little more masculine today, but I also felt not comfortable saying that, because why are those things masculine? What is masculinity? What is femininity? It seems to me like it's just differing interests, and being male or female doesn't seem to have to do with anything in terms of being masculine or feminine, and it's just kind of, it's constricting and it's suffocating in some ways. I mean, with all sorts of areas in my life, I'm constantly finding this expectant kind of attitude to define myself, whether it be in my gender or in my religion or in my sexual preference or even in my professional preference or my whatever goals I have professionally. There's always that kind of like expected attitude from other people that I'm supposed to define it like based on male or female. And I think that can be a little, no, not a little bit, but like a huge problem for a lot of people, especially if you don't have a clean cut kind of definition as to what you are. And going back to the whole men being objectified and abused in the media, I think it's very interesting that that's going on and people aren't batting an eyelash. I'm not trying to take away from the fact that women have been objectified for years on magazine covers, and that eating disorders have, you know, been on the rise for them because they're expected to look or act a certain way. But with men, it's the exact same thing right now. I mean, with men, you can't, like, as a man, I can't walk past a magazine rack with men's health and fitness magazine and not feel as though I am doing something wrong, or something like that society thinks that I'm doing something wrong. It's really ridiculous, because eating disorders in men now have been on the rise like crazy in the past few years, but you don't hear anything on the news about it because men don't talk about it. Men don't want to talk about their problems, and that's fine, but we're having a lot of illnesses and deaths and depression for nothing, because we're working on this campaign to, you know, make sure that women know that they are beautiful no matter what they look like, which is true, but men don't have that right now, because, and I think it's kind of ironic, because in a way I think that a lot of the reason is because they're expected to just tough it out because they're men, but that's exactly what women don't want to happen to them. They don't want to be expected to do things or like to suck it up because they're women. And yet, you know, men are kind of having this silent cold war against things like bulimia and anorexia and steroid use, and it's really annoying because I've talked to women before who don't realize that men have the same kind of physical problems, like body image problems that women do, but you can't go into a men's locker room without feeling, you know, self-conscious about yourself, and you're supposed to be well-groomed, but not too well-groomed, because heaven forbid people think you're gay and then you can't get a girlfriend, but you know, you don't want to be too messy because then you can't get a girlfriend. It's all about getting a girlfriend for some reason, and you know, it's just kind of, it's super ridiculous. I mean, you are expected to work out, but you can't work out too much because people will think you're popping roids, and it's just, we have all these things that we're expected to be like, but the fact of the matter is, if there's like one more thing that I want to say, it's that it's just as hard to be Ken as it is to be Barbie. Like, there's no difference. You are trying to fulfill a perfect image. Those men are photoshopped as well in magazines, so it's ridiculous, and I think that there needs to be a lot more attention brought to the fact that it's not just women, it's people in general. There are body issues with people. It's not a men versus women issue. It's people. There needs to be something done about it. It's ridiculous. I don't think maybe we should, destroy the opportunity to identify as man or woman, but I think we need to redefine them as strictly biological, because I think that at this time especially, we're coming to a point in evolution where there's more than just a blur between personalities in correspondence to what gender you feel you are. And that's causing a lot of problems because the media is still expecting us to fit neatly into those gender roles. But as a society, young people, people in our generation, are having a lot of issues with that. And I think that might be why bar fights start between men, because they want to assure other people that they're masculine, when really they probably have interests that are typically male and typically female, that they don't divulge or they don't, appreciate about themselves, and they're trying to make valid the fact that they're masculine or more masculine than thou kind of thing. And it's very sad. I think the whole gender role thing right now, it's destroying people and it's killing them, and it's not really fun.
As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, my name is Maria Bryan. I am a 23-year-old bisexually identified woman. And you've heard all about many different things from many wonderful individuals, but I also thought it would be nice to maybe do a little interview of myself at the end, because unfortunately it seems that men are more willing to talk about their sexuality than women are when I was looking for participants for this project, but I figured there should be at least some female representation in this video. As a bisexual woman who realized that they were attracted to both, or I should say, as I said, I am a bisexual woman who realized that I was attracted to men and women when I was probably 15, through a discussion I had with a friend who just said, "Have you ever thought about being attracted to women?" And it was after I had gotten out of a relationship, which when you're young, relationships might not be that serious, but they do hit you pretty hard in the head when they end. But she inspired me to actually look into it and think about it, and I realized I am not only attracted to the male body, but I'm also attracted to the female body. I think they're both beautiful in each of their own ways. And when it comes to physical attraction for me, I find that it is more about aesthetics than anything. It does not matter what biological part you have. It's about how beautiful you may be or what qualities you might have physically that are nice. On a different level, when it comes to emotional attraction, I don't find that there is a difference between the male and the female persona. I know plenty of men who are more effeminate than what is generally considered to be the typical male personality. Certainly more effeminate than I am. And I've also met women who are the same, and it doesn't matter what kind of personality that you have depending on your gender. Your personality is your personality, and at least in my opinion. And when it comes to being attracted to someone's personality, it's not about the gender that they're portraying. It's not about the gender that they have under their pants, their biology that they have. I am attracted to a particular type of personality, and sometimes it arises in men, and sometimes it arises in female, in women. It's one of those things. It's hard to be bisexual in the hypersexualized modern state, I find, because a lot of people criticize bisexual individuals for being sexually frivolous or wanting to sit on a fence and not have to make a decision, or not have the responsibility of having to deal with I've had criticisms about not wanting to be in a committed relationship. For some reason, I've found in my experience that lack of commitment is also tied with bisexual individuals. And I don't know if I necessarily find that offensive to me, but in general maybe to anyone who's bisexual, if that's the way that they're being portrayed, that's a little unfair, I believe, because odds are individuals who are making said accusations don't actually know anyone who's bisexual, or maybe are getting a bad example from one person. I personally have been in a committed relationship for almost 2 years now with a man, and that's fine, and I guess I'm a living example of the exact opposite of some of these criticisms, and I know many other people who would be in the same case. One of the things that I am extremely grateful for in realizing what I did about my own personal sexual and emotional attractions to individuals is that it has opened me up to the larger world of sexuality, even though there might be things that I might not personally be aroused by or be interested in engaging in. It's such a fascinating world to learn about, and I love learning about, you know, what might a particular person be turned on by, where certain pornographic images come from. For example, French postcards, I think, are some of the most beautiful pieces of art that have existed in the 20th century. And technically, they're considered gaudy porn. But coming from our standpoint now, I look at them as beautiful nudes. And a lot of other people around me have different preferences on how they want to express themselves, whether it's with their sexual attraction or their gender identification or their sexual preferences, as we've seen in the course of the video. And it just makes me so excited to be able to talk openly and hear what other people have to say about sexuality.